सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। We continue with verse number 23 of chapter 4. Verse number 23, chapter 4. Gata sangasya muktasya jnanavastita chetasah yajnaya charata karma samagram praviliyate. One who is devoid of attachment, liberated, with mind established in knowledge, acting for yajna, his whole action is dissolved. Continuing the description of how the perfect one, liberated one, performs action. Continuing with this discussion. So first he says, Gata sangasya, one who is devoid of attachment, liberated, with mind established in knowledge, acting for yajna. What he left in chapter 3, he picks it up here. In the middle of chapter 3, he left yajna and he went into the technique of action and everything. From where he left yajna, he picks up the concept of yajna here. Acting for yajna, he uses the word yajna again. Acts for the sake of yajna, his whole action is dissolved. Samagram karma praviliyate. Samagram karma praviliyate meaning his whole action is dissolved. Now, we'll see. We'll see all this. One who is devoid of attachment in relation to the action, in relation to the doing, he is of two. He is neither attached to the doing, nor he is attached to the results that is going to come out of the doing. Attachment to the doing means two. Either a person is attached to the very doing the action, or he is very attached to the results, the phala that it is going to come out of that action. Devoid of attachment means he is free from both. He is neither attached to the doing, nor is he attached to the results of the doing, the phala. In that way, he is detached. Liberated. Mukta. He is a liberated person. Liberated from what? Liberated from the consequences of action. Liberation is nothing but freedom from the consequences. Liberation means transcending law of karma. So who is a mukta? A liberated one has transcended the consequences of action. Now understand it as when you understand who is an ignorant person who has all these, you can see a liberated one is exactly the opposite of him. An ignorant one is bound by the consequences of his action. He necessarily has to go through, he necessarily has to experience the consequences of his action. A liberated one, liberation means he is free from the consequences of action. His mind is established in knowledge. Jnana Pastita Chetasaha. His mind is established in knowledge. What is the knowledge? The knowledge in this context is I am not the doer. I am not the doer is the knowledge in relation to action. Ignorance in relation to action is I am the doer. So what is the knowledge that his mind is established in relation to action? Now, since he's talking about action, you need to understand everything in relation to action. So his mind established in knowledge. What is the knowledge? He knows that he is not that kartrutva. I am not the doer. Acting yajnaya acharataha is the most beautiful point, and the turning point into what he is going to say, something very beautiful following. What he is going to say now is yajna and the various types of yajna, how to convert all actions into worship, all that he is going to describe. So he is setting he is preparing it, acting for yajna with mind established in knowledge. Now I'll explain one by one. Devoid of attachment. What is the attachment to? The attachment to the doing, or the attachment to the results of the doing. So there are two things. One is the doing, another is the result. So attachment can be to the doing, or attachment can be to the phala, the result that you are going to get, or maybe a combination. It can be a combination of both also. It's not mutually exclusive. It can be a combination of it can be a combination of both two. Such a person is devoid of attachment. He is liberated. Muktaha. He is a muktaha. An ignorant one is not a liberated one. What is the ignorant one means? He is bound by the consequences. You do an action. What are the action? We have seen it any number of times. Actions are done through these three: thought, word, and deed. Manasam, Vachikam, Kayakam. These three. Now, whatsoever actions you do through these three, you are bound by the consequences of it. And the consequences of it is sukha or dukkha. What are the consequences? The consequences of it is sukha or dukkha. And always it is mixed. Always it is mixed. The experience of sukha and dukkha is mixed. Sometimes sukha, sometimes dukkha, and it keeps alternating. Even in a experience, a sukha and dukkha both combines. This is what is known as bondage. Means who is the liberated one? Liberated one means he is not bound by the consequences. That's what he says, I am liberated. And he says I am liberated means there is no such thing called consequences for me anymore. For all of us, there is something called a consequence. This consequence we may not be able to see most of the time. Carefully follow. The consequence of it is not visible. Sometime back, a few classes back, I explained this as drishta and adrishta. The consequences are unseen. Since the consequences, since you are not able to see the consequences while doing the action. See, there are some actions where you see the consequence immediately. You will be very alert there. You put the finger in the fire, you see the consequence immediately. Drishta it is. You see it immediately, you know what it is, you'll be very careful there. Most of the time in life, the consequences come later, which is adrishta. Adrishta means unseen. Unseen when, while doing it, you are not able to understand there is a thing called the consequence. This is what unseen is. Today, the word adrishta has come to mean luck. Romba adrishtam sir, na, they say luck. No, it's not luck. Adrishta means that which is unseen. When, while you are doing it, you are not able to see it. Some of the actions, you see the consequence immediately. Like, you slap a person, chances are you will get it back immediately. So you are very careful there. Yeah, Liam. You stop at the signal. The red is there. You need to stop, and you see there is no policeman there. You can go and if you see the traffic police standing there, you immediately stop. Why? Because you are able to see the consequence immediately. Why we need an intellect is because, why we need this knowledge, why we need an intellect is because as the action is being done, the consequences are unseen. Because the consequences are unseen, the person does whatever. Because the consequences are not seen, a person does whatever he or she wants to do. Whatever they like to do, they do. Because they assume something. They believe something, they assume something. Whereas the reality is you are not able to see the consequence. One who is devoid of, one who is liberated. Liberated means liberated from the consequences. He is not attached. He is not attached to the doing, nor is he attached to the results of the doing. What is the consequences of the doing? The consequences of the doing is depression. Disappointment is the consequences of doing. Stress is when you are attached to the doing, the consequence is stress. The consequence of attachment to the fruit is disappointment. How do you know that you are attached to the fruit? How do you know that you are attached to the result? Wherever there is a disappointment, you should understand that you are attached to the result of the doing. How do you know that you are attached to the doing itself? The doing itself is very stressful. When the doing itself is very stressful, painful, you know that you are attached to the doing. And when there is a disappointment, you understand that you are attached to the phala, the result. Are you able to follow? Attached to the doing means you feel that attached to the doing means there is a feverishness while doing. There is no calmness while doing. There is a sense of, what in chapter 3 he called as feverishness. There is a type of jwara, he says. Jwaraha, he says. A type of feverishness while doing. Or you give a sense of extraordinary value to your own doing. This is what attachment to the doing is. Example, the mother thinks that if she is not there, the child will die. The mother cannot conceive that even without her, the child will continue to exist. So when she does anything, she brings in a tremendous, that's what is known as attachment to the doing, where she places an extraordinary, a black market value to one's own doing, as though if I don't do it, the whole thing will collapse. As the attachment to the doing. Are you able to follow? a black market value that I give it to my, like for example, I can think, oh my God, they have announced to lockdown. You can't go out. You can't do this. You can't do that. And imagine this happened 10 years back, 15 years back, where there is no internet, where there is no Zoom and all that. At 7:30 in the morning, if I am getting agitated, oh my God, I should have been doing the class. I am sitting at home. I should have been doing the class. I am sitting at home. Now I am attached to the doing. It may be a good action or bad action, but there is a very attachment to this is what is known as attachment to the doing. When you are attached to the doing, what is the consequence? Stress. And then you can be attached to the phala. When you are attached to the phala, the fruit, the consequence is disappointment. That's where you find most of the people who get into action are stressed and disappointed. Disappointment can be, for the action that I have done, sir, what I got in return is peanuts. I should have gotten more. But who recognizes all this? People say, no. Who recognizes all this? Who recognizes? Nobody recognizes all this. What I am getting in return is nothing to what I have. So he got a fruit and disappointed with the fruit. This is what is known as attachment to action. This person here, a liberated person, is devoid of attachment, meaning he is devoid of the doing, also devoid of the consequences of the doing. Now, Prasad is asking, negative consequences are also adrishta, no? Yes, adrishta means ishtam, anishtam. Adrishta can be of two. It can be pleasant, it can be unpleasant. It can be favorable, it may be unfavorable. If it is favorable, I will call it as luck. If it is not favorable, I will call it as fate. Again, I repeat, the adrishta phala is of two. The two is, you can call it as favorable or unfavorable. If it is favorable, you will call it as, I am very lucky today. If it is not favorable, you will call it as, it's my fate. Tamil சொல்லும்போது எல்லாம் தலைவெழுத்து sir, they say no. It's my fate that I have to experience this. Now both are adrishta, meaning your own action is what is causing this. You are not able to understand it while doing. This person is able to understand the consequences while doing. Even before he starts the action, he is able to understand the consequences. That is why sometime before in one of the class I said intellect means the capacity to see the end in the beginning. What is intellect? What does buddhi means? Buddhi means, intellect means the ability, the capacity to see the end in the beginning. What is the end? This is going to give me stress. This is going to give me bondage. This is going to take me away from the truth. He is not able to see it. This person is liberated because he is liberated from this. Is it okay, Prasad? Even negative consequences are part of adrishta. For adrishta can be both. It can be negative or positive. Positive means favorable to me, which I will call it as luck. One person told me, lucky sir, next day they announced the airports are shut. I took the flight and I took the last flight and I was able to reach here. Lucky. Another person says, not knowing that airport is shut, I went to the airport, sir, and flights all got cancel, and I am stuck. Are you able to follow? Now, if it is favorable, you will call it as luck. If it is not favorable, you will call it as fate, destiny. தமிழ்ல சொல்லணும்னா எழுதிட்டார் சார் தலையில இல்லையா? இல்லையா? அதுக்கு தான் நல்ல பெருசா we put something. அவர் எழுதுனதெல்லாம் மறைக்கணும்னு தான் we put something so big on the forehead that some dharma is some dharma is seen. You follow? So this is what adrishta is. Is it okay, Prasad? Yeah.
This attachment to doing, it could be good or bad also. Good or not good or bad. If I'm very happy, I'll be in an excited state of doing, or if I'm unhappy, it will be an agitated state of doing. Both are attachment to doing. It's like that.
It is your mental state, attachment to doing. Ranjana is asking attachment to doing. Attachment to doing means while you are doing, what is your mental state?
Excitement is mental state.
If you are excited about it, if you are excited, if you are so excited that you are that you can't that you got a chance to do it and you make all mistakes because of excitement, it is attachment to doing. Attachment to doing means the mental state while doing. The mental state can be one of joy or sorrow. It can be joy, it can be sorrow. It doesn't matter. But still it is attachment to doing only. Now, when he talks about yajna, that he is going to say, what we are going to see as yajna, none of this will be in that. That's why the Shastras, the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, he has such an extraordinary value for yajna type of karma. There is no joy, there is no sorrow. Abdinna machine madriya. Abdinna we will look like a machine. Joy or sorrow is in relation to the likes and dislikes. You have a like to do and you are gotten a chance to do, you are joyful while doing. So likes and dislikes, when it drives the action, joy and sorrow happens while doing. Supposing I have a like to do this and I got a chance to speak, I will be every day, I'm not doing it. Every day I'll be sending messages to Bhaskar. Oh, thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you, Bhaskar. Because I have a like to do this class. And Bhaskar came and told me there is something called Zoom, sir. Don't think that you can take a holiday break. Zoom, even through Zoom also you have to come and talk. I am so excited about it. Why? Because I like to talk, and when I am given an opportunity to do that, I get very excited. Now I like to do, and I am denied an opportunity. What happens to me? Stress, anger. So therefore, joy and sorrow is always in relation to, yes, likes and dislikes. That's what attachment to doing is. The mental state while doing an action. Sometimes I have to do an action which I don't want to do. Like for example, I don't want to cook, but I am told to do that, and I get very frustrated doing that action. So pain while doing the action, excitement, pleasure or pain, both implies attachment to doing. Then what is the right way of doing? When Yajnapati Pesmodi, we are going to see all that. Now we are only discussing to explain this, what are the opposite of it, and if you understand that, you will understand what is meant by devoid of attachment. Okay? Vaidhi is asking, is ego attached to doing? Yes, ego is attached to doing. Now, it all matters in what do you mean by the word ego here. How you define the word ego here. Is ego attached to doing? If you mean ego as the individuality, yes, it is the individual that is attached to the doing. If you mean ego as an exaggerated notion, ego mean, if you mean, and most of the time we don't mean ego as an exaggerated notion. We always mean ego to be ego in synonymous with the I, the individual, the jiva. Is jiva attached to the doing? Is ego attached to doing? Yes, he is attached to the doing. Why he is attached to the doing? Because raga, dvesha, likes and dislikes is driving the doing. When raga, dvesha is driving the doing, definitely there will be an attachment to the doing. Is it okay, Vaidhi?
Thank you.
Yeah. The consequences, liberated means, I have explained already, liberated from the consequences of the doing. What are the consequences of the doing? Sukha or dukkha. Pleasure or pain is the ultimate consequence of all your doing is sukha or dukkha. Ultimately, it boils down to that. He is liberated from the consequence means he is liberated from sukha and dukkha. Meaning what? He has attained the state of ananda. He has attained the state of bliss. Sukha is in relation to dukkha. Dukkha is in relation to sukha. In the case of bliss, there is no opposite. Sukha, pleasure, happiness needs sorrow for you to recognize happiness. Only when you are in a sorrow state before, now you can say I am happy. Only if you have been in a happy stage before, you can say now I am in sorrow. So the sorrow is dependent upon sukha. The sukha is dependent upon dukkha, both. In this man's case here, he is free from, in this person's case, he is free from both. What is he free from? He is free from the consequences. What are the consequences? The consequences of sukha and dukkha. Now, yajnaya acharataha.
So, sukha and dukkha is the consequences, you say. So, sukha means excitement, joy, sunikla. Dukkha is frustration, agitation, sunikla.
Sukha means happiness. Dukkha means sorrow.
Excitement and frustration is not
Sukha dukkha. Sukha means happiness. Dukkha means sorrow. The consequence of an action is sukha and dukkha. English language synonymously they use everything. In English language synonymously they use everything. Now what is the consequence of an action? The consequence of an action is sukha or dukkha. Sukha means the pala, the result. You want wealth. What is wealth for? You have all the wealth, but you can't buy anything with it. Now, will you be happy with that wealth? So, with wealth, you need to buy an object which will give you happiness. Therefore, what is the ultimate consequence? What is the ultimate consequence of action? Sukha or dukkha? Ultimately, a person is, we have seen it in Bhagavad, dukkha nivritti and sukha prapti. Ultimately, what is it that a person is aiming at? Dukkha nivritti and sukha prapti. This person is liberated from these two. Neither he is doing something to avoid dukkha, neither he is doing something to get sukha. Both he is free. He is free from dukkha nivritti and he is free from sukha prapti. Are you able to follow?
Because it appears like a consequence of depression and excitement. So is not the consequence itself driving the action mental state of a person? I'm asking like that.
There are two things. While doing an action is one. Another is the consequence of an action. Understand action as two. One is the doing, another is the consequence of the doing. I am not discussing the mental state while doing. I am discussing the mental state while I am discussing the consequence of the doing. What is the consequence of the doing? Sukha or dukkha? Understand it as, try to separate these two and see it first. Try to separate these two. There is a mental state while doing. There is something called consequence. You study for exam is the action. The result is you failed. You study for exam is the action. You pass is the result. Are you able to follow? So there is something called doing. There is something called consequence of the doing. Buying the car is an action. Consequence of having the car can be sukha or dukkha. Understand it separately. Are you able to follow? In relation to the consequence, it is always the ultimate consequence of action is sukha or dukkha. This person is attached to, this person here is not attached to the consequences. Meaning, he is neither interested in the sukha that he is getting, he is going to get out of it, nor is he avoiding some dukkha. In this case, he is liberated. Are you okay? Don't mix up doing to the consequence of the doing. Ultimately, it may get connected. As I'm trying to say one thing, stick to that. Don't mix up doing and the consequences straight away. Separate the doing, separate the consequences. Is it okay? Separate it. Now, Vijay is asking, Vijay Ramakrishnan, can you explain consequence more with regard to liberation? Can you explain consequence more with regard to liberation? With regards to liberation, there is no consequence. Consequence is always a phala. Moksha is not a phala. Moksha is not a consequence. Or what are the consequences of liberation? That question cannot be asked, because moksha itself is the phala. What is the consequences of bliss? Can you ask this question? Are you able to follow? Can you ask what is the consequence of being blissful? The consequence of being blissful is you will be blissful. That's all. Now, moksha itself is not a consequence, and moksha doesn't have a consequence. That is why it is something which is very difficult to comprehend. If moksha is an effect of doing, we all will be happy to do something. If moksha is a phala, if we say moksha is a phala, moksha is a fruit that we are going to get, we'll be very happy doing it. But then when it is said, you are that already. It is not a product of any action. It's not a product of any doing. First question that what you will ask, then why do anything, sir? That is Arjuna's problem. If moksha is not the consequence of doing, then why are you driving me into this doing? Why are you driving me into this Gora karma, Yajna karma, why are you driving me into all this? Simply say, don't do. Are you able to follow? So, Moksha itself is not a consequence. Moksha is not a consequence, and there is no consequence to moksha.
Okay.
For it is an end in itself. It doesn't produce anything. Just as action produces an effect, moksha doesn't produce anything. For moksha is complete in itself. It doesn't produce anything as a result of it. Is it okay, Vijay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right. So what is the consequence in regard to liberation? Moksha is bliss. And what is the consequence of being blissful? You can't say more bliss, because it doesn't add up to the bliss, which is already explained in chapter 2. Apuryamanam machala pratishtam. Like a samudra he is. Things coming in, things going out. Doesn't make any difference to him. So all that is already explained. You follow? So moksha means it is a state in itself, which is complete in itself, which doesn't have any consequence, nor moksha is a consequence. This is where it is very, very confusing always. On the one hand, you keep saying moksha is not a consequence of action, sir. On the other hand, we say do action. If moksha is not a consequence of action, then why do one action? No. Moksha is not a consequence of an action. You understand only when you reach a very high level of evolution. In order to get to that very high level of evolution, you need to do action, a special type of action. You need to bring in you need to do a special type of action. You need to bring in a special attitude to action. What is a special type of action? What is a special attitude that you need to bring into action? A unique attitude. Yajna. Yajna karma. So he's telling, Krishna is telling Arjuna, perform this fight, act as an yajna. Yajnaya acharatah. He is leading us into this discussion. 24, 25, he is going to start. He is just so beautifully introducing the word yajna here itself. Yajnaya acharatah. Is it okay, Vijay?
Yes, sir. Yes, Hari Om. Yes.
Yeah, Hari Om. Now, from iPhone to everyone, whatever that iPhone is, the question is mental state while doing also is a consequence, which is what I already explained. Mental state while doing also a consequence. Right now, don't mix up both. For you to understand it, understand them separately. Understand them separately. While doing, there is the mental state. For the consequence, there is a mental state. Just because we use the mental state, don't take everything together. Understand that as separate. Oh, iPhone Asha ji, I didn't realize. Okay. Mental state while doing is one. Mental state while the consequences is different. And don't mix up both. Ultimately, they may get connected. When it is said, understand it separately. Why do you want to mix? Seriya? Is it okay, Ashaji? Bharat is asking. In this verse under discussion, verse number 23, is it the mind? What is referred to as jnanam? Jnana vastita chetasaha, whose mind is established in knowledge. The question that Bharat is asking is, what is it that is referred as jnanam? What is it that is referred as jnanam here? What is referred as jnanam here is kartrutva. Ajnanam is I am the doer. Ajnanam is I am the doer. Jnanam is I am not the doer. So, is it what is meant by knowledge here? Mind established in knowledge. What is the knowledge that the mind is established? The mind is established in the understanding that I am not the doer. Mind is that, ignorance is that which says, I am using mind and ignorance synonymously here, Bharat. Ignorance is that which says, I am the doer.
Right.
Ignorance is that which says, I am the doer. Kartritva. Jnanam means, jnana means an understanding that I am not the doer. When I say I am not the doer, then the question is, who is the doer? Vedanta says, at one level, Prakriti is the doer. At another level, there is no doing at all. It is Maya. Are you able to follow? So, when we say, I am not the doer, but we see so many things happening. I am doing. So many things are around me is also happening. Then, who's doing all this? At one stage, they say it is Prakriti. Prakriti is the doer. Why are you thinking that you are doing it? At another level, they say, there is no such thing as doing itself that is happening, for all this is Maya, Mithya. So he has this knowledge. Now, I didn't go into the discussion of liberation as in mind established knowledge as in all doing is Maya. I am trying to explain it in terms of what we can practice. But mind established knowledge means it can be two. I am not the doer. If I am not the doer, then who's the doer? Prakriti is the doer. Second is, there is no such thing called doer. There is no doing at all that is happening, for the whole thing is Maya. Are you able to follow? Either end extreme. In between comes the third possibility. In between these two comes the third possibility. What is the third possibility? The ego has to necessarily say there is a doer. The ego has to necessarily believe, the ego has to necessarily accept, the ego will be satisfied only when you say there is a doer. Mind established knowledge means for doing to happen, a doership is not. For doing to happen, a doership is not needed at all. As in Ramatirtha, rose gives fragrance, sun gives vitality. Doing can happen by itself, and there is no need to bring in a doership and pollute it. So, mind established knowledge means, I would say, a combination of everything. When I say everything, means a combination of all the three that I said. I am not the doer. On what basis I can say, what is the logic and reason? What is the proof to say that I am not the doer? What is the proof to say I am not the doer? The first proof is, when I say I am the doer, I ignore the enlivening factor that is enabling me to do, no? Yeah, when I say I am the doer na, what is straight away ignored? What is straight away ignored? The enabling factor is, the enlivening factor is ignored completely. In fact, there is the thing called enlivening factor and the memory varad. It believes that it's all because of my hard work. It's all because of my hard effort. One is the enlivener. Second thing to say that I am not the doer is, can you do anything by yourself without taking the support from others? It is not possible. Therefore, I am the doer straight away is negated by this knowledge. Without the support of the enlivening factor, nothing can be done. Without the support of others also, nothing can be done. Abdinna, all are doers. So I have to say, samashti doing. There is no individual doing. There is the totality that is doing. That's yajna karma. The starting point of yajna karma comes here. For every action, we say it is the totality that is everybody is contributing to what I am, to one action of what I am doing. There is a totality that is contributing. In that sense, he is established in knowledge. Are you able to follow? See, this mind established in knowledge in Radha is so beautiful, it is so wonderful, it is. What is the knowledge? When I say I am the doer, first thing about kartrutva is what is forgotten in kartrutva? The enlivening factor. In the enlivening factor kartrutva, Kenopanishad, part 3. Do you remember the Kenopanishad part 3? Brahman comes and stands in front. Agni comes and says, Brahman asks Agni, who are you? I am Jata Vedas. I burn everything. Brahman says, burn this grass. Agni couldn't burn that grass. Why? Because enlivening factor switched off. As it were. It's a story. So what is that kartrutva means? The first thing about kartrutva is the enlivening factor is ignored. The second thing that is kartrutva is the contributory factors of others is ignored. The contributory factors of others is ignored. The enlivening factor is ignored. And then the person says, I am the doer. Vedanta comes and says, this is ignorance. This is ignorance. From another angle, you can look at it. What is looking at it from another angle? Which is what I said first, the three. The three. Who is doing? You are not the doer, na? But somebody has to be there. Somebody has to be there, no, sir, doing everything. At least why can't you say God is the doer of everything? Yeah, people say, okay, at least you can say, at least you can say God is the doer of everything. No. You need not even bring in God and all unnecessarily. Prakriti is the doer from one angle. From another angle, there is no, what you see as this whole thing itself is one big Maya, Mityanda. Where is the chance of a person having kartrutva? You follow? Enlivening factor is what we call as Ishvara, God. Karma yoga la Ishvara factor kondu varalana kartrutva da. If the factor of Ishvara, if the factor of God is not brought in karma yoga, it is fully, it is height of kartrutva only. That's why you find most of the people who's doing so-called good work are more egoistic, more arrogant. Their arrogance is so subtle. Their arrogance is so subtle. Why? Because the enlivening factor is ignored completely. We don't even think about this. As Swamiji says all the time, there is a divinity that shapes our ends. There is a divinity that shapes our ends. There is something other than you are doing also playing a part. Ignorant people will call it as fate. As abdina fate dana sir adu. எல்லாம் முன்னாடியே predetermined எழுதி வச்சிட்டாங்கல்ல சார். It is not that. There is factor other than your doing means the totality the enlivening factor which is incomprehensible to that mind, which is incomprehensible to the mind. For the mind will not be able to comprehend the totality support itself. The mind says, where is the totality supporting? I am doing, sir. In fact, totality is obstructing. Yeah, it will say they will say the totality is not helping us, sir. Totality is only an obstruction. Are you able to follow? What is mind established in knowledge means? Mind established in knowledge means without this totality, it cannot be. Kartrutva has no meaning. So in that sense, he is established in knowledge. What is the knowledge that is established? Though doing, he understands I am not doing.
Right.
Elsewhere he said it. Though doing, he understands that I am not
Doing.
Though doing, he says I am not the doer. Oh, what a humility we say. No, it's a very humble person, sir. Not only he is doing, he also have the humility to say I am not the doer. It's not a humility. It's not a false pretense. It is knowledge. That is why he uses the word knowledge here. Jnanam here. What is jnanam? What is the definition of knowledge? The definition of knowledge is seeing it as it is. That is what jnanam means. Jnanam means seeing it as it is. இருக்கிறத இருக்கிற மாதிரி பார்க்கிறது தான் ஞானம். கர்த்திருவன்றது, there is no such thing called kartrutva is the jnanam. There is no such thing called kartrutva is the jnanam. For kartrutva is that which he has projected. Kartrutva is a projection of ignorance he understands. Jnanam nale go, always remember, jnanam means seeing things as it is. What is seeing things as it is? Kartrutvanrada ajnanam. For kartrutva doesn't exist at all. It is not that he's being very charitable to say, it's not that he's being non-egoistic. It's not all that. He has got the jnanam. What is jnanam? Jnanam says there is a kartrutvanrade ajnanam. Are you able to follow?
Yeah.
This is the most difficult aspect of knowledge is this. What is jnanam? Seeing things as it is. Ajnanam is seeing it in the way that you want to see it. That is ajnanam. What is ignorance? Seeing it in the way that you want to see it is ignorance. Ignorance means projecting yours on something is ajnanam. What is jnanam? Seeing it as it is. What is seeing it as it is? Kartrutva is my projection. What is jnanam? No kartrutva is jnanam. So his mind is established in that knowledge. This is this word. Every time he uses the word jnanam, it is so meaningful. It is. Now kartrutva is what is there. We project, I am not the doer, we project it as a moral value. Are you able to follow? Most of the time what people do is, they think, when I say I am not the doer, he is being very humble. He is being very modest. Krishna comes and says, it is not humility, modesty, it is knowledge. What is knowledge? Na kartrutva mein anga? There is no kartrutva there. There is no rope. So there is no snake. There is no snake. There is only rope. In fact, there is only rope. No snake என்றது சொல்லணும்ன்ற அவசியமே. For a person who is seeing the snake, we say there is only a rope. Are you able to follow? So what is jnanam? Jnanam is seeing things as they are. What is seeing it as it is means? Kartrutva is what I see. and I am not the doer is what I project. Jnanam is ulta. Jnana means an understanding that I am not the doer is the reality. Unnecessarily, I have been bringing in this notion of doer and polluting it. Are you able to follow? This wise man here has this knowledge. So he is completely free from it. Is it okay, Bharat? Yeah.
Yes, Guruji. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, Subramaniam is asking. Will he understands while doing action? Will he do so if he knows the result is? I'm not able to follow what you are saying, Subramaniam. You have to unmute. Somebody has to unmute Subramaniam.
Subramanian sir, you're unmuted.
I think Subramaniam, you need to unmute yourself now. I think you have to unmute yourself now. I'm not able to. Yes, Solunga. Yes.
When he understands while doing the action,
Yes.
because he understands everything, including the consequences.
Yes.
And he is aware that the consequences are going to be victim. That is,
Yes.
going to result in anything useful.
Yes.
Will
The
be-
consequence is going to result in anything?
It's not going to be, it's going to be victim. It's going to be
Yes. Waste. Okay. Vyartham. Yes.
In that case, will he be still continuing with his action?
Okay. Yes. Now the question that Subramaniam asking is, while doing an action, if he understands the result is a vyartha. Vyartha means it's going to be useless. Will he still continue that action? For a wise person in this context here, he does that which he ought to do. So there is no vyartha for him. Vyartham illa. It is called vyartha. Vyartha means vyarthama poiduthu solra mulya. Vyartham means useless. So in this context of a wise person here in verse number 23, since he is doing that which he ought to do, there is no consequence that he sees as beneficial or not beneficial. He does it because it ought to be. He does it because it ought to be done, irrespective of whether it is going to be beneficial or not beneficial. Ultimately, what will happen is it will end up becoming beneficial only. Loka Sangraha. Ultimately, it will end up being beneficial only. But he is not concerned about it. He is not interested in that. Are you able to follow the difference? Ultimately, it will never go vyartha. Yajna karma, doing that which he ought to do, will never turn vyartha at any point of time. But that person, while doing, he is not
Concerned.
He is not concerned about it. He is detached from it. That's the difference. Are you able to follow?
Yes.
Yeah. All this is able to do. I'm getting back to the verse. All this is able to do because he is performing action. Like what? Yajnaya acharatah, acting for the sake of yajna. Acting for the sake of yajna. Yajna means, yajna literally, is it okay till now? I'm going into that, I'm going into yajna now. Yajna means, literally in English, the word yajna has to be translated as a sacrifice, has to be translated as a ritualistic sacrifice, as a ritual. Literally, in English language, you have to do that. But yajna has two components. Yajna comes from the root yajante. Yajna comes from the root yajante, offering. Yajna means offering. Yajna doesn't mean giving. Yajna doesn't mean sacrificing. Yajna means offering. It's offering. That's what yajna is all about. Yajante comes from the root. It means offering. So whenever we talk about offering, two things comes into that. One is the karma part of offering. Second is the bhakti bhavana part. That is why yajna is of these two. Yajna has the part of karma, which is the doing. Second is the bhavana, the bhava part. So whenever we say sacrifice, ritual, these two are not implied. In the word, when we use the Sanskrit word yajna, it is implied. What is it? Even though in English, we have to translate it as sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. What it actually means is, yajna means offering. The moment you say offering vandurthanale, a few things come into play. Offering na sollitnale, the few things come into play. What are the few things that come into play? There is an offerer, the subject. Offering into. Third is the act of offering. The fourth is the place of offering. Another yajna is of four. Yajna na offering. Don't worry. I don't know when we will finish up to verse 33. Yeah? You have to keep hearing this word. You have to keep hearing this word yajna, 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 yajna. And extraordinary is this yajna. In normal giving, there are three. In the normal act of giving, in the normal act of sacrifice, there are three. What are the three? The giver, the receiver, and the actual act of giving. The giver, the receiver, and the actual act of giving. Yajna, when you do yajna, what do you start first? How do you start the yajna? How do you start the ritual? First you prepare the place, no? The kund is prepared first. So yajna, the fourth thing comes in. What is the fourth thing that comes into yajna? The fourth thing that comes into yajna is the kund, the place. So yajna, four things you need to remember. What are the four things that comes into play? The offerer, the act of offering, to whom it is offered, the place of offering. This is the yajna. This is what yajna is all about. The place of offering is the kund. What you need to understand as any field of activity. The kund is the field of activity. The act of offering is what is the attitude that you bring in while doing. That is the attitude. That is the act of offering. What is the attitude that you bring in? What is the attitude that you bring in while doing the offering? While doing the offering, the attitude that you bring in is idam na mama. Idam na mama. The mantras, we have chanted it any number of times, no? Agnaye swaha, agnaye idam na mama. Idam na mama means not mine. When I say not mine, I have given it to you. It is yours completely. Yajna means offering an unconditional offering. Adi yajna. Opposite of that is conditional offering. Sir, I am giving you 1,000 rupees. Make sure that you use it for this purpose only. Yeah? Abdina adi yajna kadayadhu. Yajna means idam na. What is the attitude of offering? Idam na mama. This is the field of, first is the field of activity. Second is the attitude that you bring in while doing the action. The third one is the offerer, the subject, you, the offerer. The fourth one is to whom it is offered. Who's the offered means the receiver. In the case of yajna, who's the receiver? In the ritual yajna, who's the receiver? In the yajna ritual, who's the receiver? Fire. Fire is the receiver. Yeah. And how fire receives it? How fire receives it? Clear. And Allah swaha we say, no? It takes it and the receiver, Agni, is a wonderful receiver because he receives it and ensures that it is exhausted. He will exhaust it. What are you offering? The subject has a few things to offer. You have a few things to offer. How do you offer? With the attitude of na mama. To whom? To Agni, who is not going to say thank you, ATG certificate lang kodukka mattaru avaru. Clear? He is not going to give you a ATG certificate lang. He is not going to give you a certificate of Bharat Ratna or you are the best donor lang. He is not going to give. What he will do? He will, clear? What he will give back? Clear? As a symbolica, we put it on the forehead. The remnants. Prasad he will give you. Clear? You give him this, what Agni gives back to you? The prasad. In the field of activity. This is the yajna ritual. Now, he is not talking about the yajna ritual alone. He is talking about all activities in life. How to convert all activities of life into an offering. How to convert all activities of life into an offering. That's why it is called one of the extraordinary portions and the most difficult portion, he says. He says the most difficult portion to understand is the 12 yajnas that we are going to see from verse number 25 to 30. How many ever times you read it, how many ever times it is explained, it still remains something is more deeper in it. Extraordinary is this yajna. Are you able to follow? So I'm just setting the background for yajna. I'm just setting what is the background with which this yajna can be understood. What is it? In ordinary giving, there are three. Field of activity pathila anga pesa matom. In ordinary giving, there are three. Who are the three? The giver, the receiver, and the act of giving. Yajna, what is important is the kund is also very important. The kund means the field of activity. Now connect everything. What is the kund for you? What is the kund for Arjuna? Battlefield is the kund. Yeah. Battlefield, he's not telling Arjuna, go and start a ritual. He's not telling Arjuna, go and start the fire. The field of activity for you, Arjuna, is the battlefield. So what is kund for Arjuna? The battlefield. What is kund for a business person? Business. What is kund for the teacher? Teaching. What is kund for the carpenter? Carpentry. Are you able to understand why the field of activity is very important? In this field of activity, what attitude you will bring in? What is the attitude you bring in while doing? While doing, the attitude is idam na mama. Idam na mama means this is not mine. What do the subject offer? What does he bring into the yajna? Ghee and grains, no? What is offered? The ghee and the grains. What is ghee and grain? Ghee and grain symbolizes your effort. Ghee and grain symbolizes your effort. Your effort you put in the field of activity by saying na mama. What is going to be the consequence of this doing? What is going to be the consequence of this doing? The consequence of this doing is vasanas getting exhausted. Vasanas getting exhausted. That is why Agni is equated to knowledge. Fire is always equated to knowledge, That's why Agni is the worshipper. Why Agni? Because Agni, instant purifier is Agni. Anything that comes in contact with Agni gets purified instantly. Similarly, you do an action, that action must purify you. Action must not taint you. Action must not contaminate you. Action must not create more and more vasanas in you. The way that you do action, that action must purify you. What type of action will purify you? Yajna karma will purify you. Yajna karma, for a small minority of population, the yajna karma is sitting and doing the fire, the ritual. It is not restricted only to that few who sits in front of the fire and does this yajna karma. This yajna karma is the formula for liberation for everybody. Yajna karma is universal knowledge. Yajna karma is sanatana dharma. In this yajna karma lies purification, lies moksha for everybody. Abdinna, how does it apply? Start from this. Don't worry, just the starting point of yajna karma. I have naraya stories I have to keep you all right. First is, in ordinary giving, there are the three. Yajna is also offering, yajna is also sacrificing, yajna is also giving. This is completely different from the other three. This is completely different. What is it? The fourth one makes it different here. What is the fourth one? You perform sacrifice in your field of activity, Arjuna. That is the important. Yajna karma comes and says, perform sacrifice, perform giving in your field of activity. Don't do it as a social service. Giving la kadayadinga. It's not that he's not saying don't do social service and all. He's saying first thing is, are you able to bring in this in your field of activity. Whatever be your field of activities. That is why yajna becomes meaningful only when you bring in the field of activity. So the four things in yajna. What are the four things? The kund, the offerer, what we generally call as yajamana. Yajamana boss kadayadu. Yajamana means one who is the doer of yajna. இதெல்லாம் orthodox words. இதெல்லாம் orthodox Sanskrit words. I'm just to show off that I also know these words in Radhika, I'm saying all this. He is called the offerer is called the yajamana, to whom it is offered to Agni. The offerer in his field of activity offers by saying idam na mama. Idda yajna. This is what yajna is all about. The offerer brings in his actions, brings in his activity, brings in his talent into his field of activity, offering it to Agni by saying idam na mama. If you do this, what happens? The existing karmas means the vasanas, the desires, all the sins get washed away in yajna, he says. All the agitations, sins means agitations, all the sins, all the papa gets washed away in yajna karma. That's why even today, people not understanding the implied meaning, they believe that superstitiously they believe the actual yajna is going to relieve them. I'm not saying it will not relieve. What relieves a person from the sin, what relieves a person from the agitation is the attitude that he is going to bring in. Are you able to follow? What is the attitude that he has to bring in? The attitude of idam na mama. So he brings in his talent, he brings in his hard work. What is he offering? What is the subject offering? He brings in all his talents, he brings in his hard, dedicated, sincere work is the offering. That's what he brings in. He brings in that. As he is bringing in that, kartrutva kondu varala kuda. He is saying na mama, idam na mama. This is not mine. This is not mine. First he says, I have offered it to you. Adhan yajna. Swaha idanna mama. Swaha idanna mama. Swaha idanna mama. This is a yajna ritual. So first he is offered. I have offered solely the pollute panada kudadu. So he says, what is offered is not. What is offered is not mine. So offering swaha namama. Swaha namama. Where do you do that? In your swadharma karma. Field of activity means swadharma karma. In your swadharma karma, Arjuna, bring in this attitude and do the actions that you have to do with dedication, shraddha, sincerity, with the attitude of offering. What goes out? Your vasanas gets exhausted. This is how yajna karma purifies. This is how the ritual, I just gave a brief description of the ritual and all that. Now when we go into the next verse, which is extraordinary verse, Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi, we are going to start into the yajna portion. Much more is there. But this is enough to start with conceiving what yajna means. This is enough to start with conceiving what yajna means. So what is the field of activity means? Your swadharma karma is your field of activity. For Arjuna, what is the field of activity? The Kund for Arjuna. The Kund for Arjuna is the battlefield. The Kund for carpenter is the carpentry field. The field of activity for everybody is whatever their field of, whatever their Swadharma karma is, that's their field of activity. In that field of activity, you bring in your talents, you bring in your dedication, you bring in your hard work, you bring in all that into that field of activity. And who do you give it to? Who do you give it to? You give it to Agni. And what Agni is going to do? He is going to make it into a Bhasma, and he will offer you prasad. He will offer you prasad. Prasad buddhi. You take it as the prasad. And you prostrate. Yajna is complete. Yajnaya acharataha. Arjuna. Now I am coming to verse number 23. Now you read verse 23, the last sentence. Acting for yajna in this manner, his whole action is dissolved. Acting for the sake of yajna in this manner, his whole action is dissolved. So, what he left in verses 9, 10, 11 of chapter 3, yajna, he picks it up here. He introduced the concept of yajna there. So much of explanation has to be given, and now he is picking it up again. And when he picks it up now, he is not going to, he is going to say something which is extraordinarily beautiful for the rest of the 7, 8 verses. That much of knowledge of action, that much of knowledge of jnanam is required. That's why it's called Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, chapter 4. That much of jnanam has to be given first before he takes up yajna karma again. Now he has given us so much of this understanding of what action is and all and everything about action. He has taken up yajna karma again. Yajnaya acharataha. His whole action is dissolved. His whole action is dissolved means all his vasanas are dissolved. This is yajna. This is yajna karma. Is it okay? Now, I just quickly clarify what Bala said. I didn't want to miss the context of yajna. That's why I didn't say. Now Bala is asking, in the context of kartavyam, which is kartritva, maya, doership, etc. Where does this come into? Where does it come into? Bala, I'm not able to understand the second part of your statement. Where does this come into?
Wordings below, Sarvam Krishna Arpanam.
Yes. Okay. Where does the word Sarvam Krishnarpanam come into?
Yeah, that sentence, yes, yeah.
Okay, that sentence. Okay. Now he's asking, whenever we do any prayer, anything, we say Sarvam Krishnarpanamastu, Brahmarpanamastu, we say, and we conclude. So, where does this come into? What does this Sarvam Krishnarpanam means? Sarvam Krishnarpanam is exactly the same as Brahmarpanam. We can call it as Krishna, or we can call it as Brahman, or we can call it as Agni. All means the same. Krishna is more Krishna as a being is more will be inspiring for some. So for them, Krishna Arpanamastu is meaningful to bring in this attitude of yajna. All means the same. Whether it is whatever be it, they don't have this, that kartritva is not there, lack of doership, etc. All this is what is meant by Sarvam. Everything is offered to you, Krishna. When I say everything is offered to you, it means what? Nothing is mine anymore. It is all offered to you. After offering it to you, Krishna, I can't come and ask, I have done so much. No, why don't you give me this in return? I cannot ask. That's where the beauty comes in. Sarvam Krishna Arpanamnu sollitomna. After that, I cannot go and ask, I did so much. No, why are you not doing this in return to me? That connection cannot be made at all. That is why all prayers, all rituals, all prayers, we conclude by saying Om Tat Sat. Yeah. Tat Sat, they say, no, Tat Sat, sometimes that Tat Sat they use in a negative connotation also. Om Tat Sat means what? All that is offered, and I have no more right to claim anything over it. So as a prayer, I have said thank you and I have stopped here. I cannot ask anything in return from him now. Krishnarpanamnu solliyachina, I cannot ask anything in return from him. What are you doing to me in return? I am giving you this. Why don't you take care of me? I cannot ask. Sarvam Krishnarpanamnu solliyachina, I can't ask Krishna, why don't you take care of coronavirus and help humanity? Because we say, maybe coronavirus is also his prasadani we take. This is how Yajna Karma takes worship and action to a different level. Is it okay, Bala? There is no Palashruti here. Yes, there is no Palashruti. Palashruti means Ekakale Pate Nityam, Dvikalamyaf Pate Nityam, Trikalamyaf Pate Nityam. Now there is Palashruti. Now all that is at a very low level. All that is Pala oriented. Palashruti nale asking for a Pala. I am chanting this. I am doing this for a Pala in return. Yajna Karma says no Pala here. That is why Yajna Karma is that slightly difficult.
Understood.
Is it okay, Bala? Yeah.
Yes, I got it. So it's
Yeah.
actually the
Yeah, excellent question. Excellent clarification. Bala brought it. So, in Yajna Karma, Palashruti, there is no Palashruti at all in Yajna, correct? In Yajna Karma, there is no Pala at all.
Okay.
Excellent. Yes, Bala.
Thank you.
Now, Ravi, last question and I close. Ravi is asking, does Agni convey the offering to the devas or dissolve actions? When we put in the Agni, when we put Ahuti into the Agni, we say Agni, take it to the deva. Agni, take it to this deva. That's what the literal meaning is. Now Shastras, the Shastric words have a literal meaning, have an intended meaning. That is why Shastra is that difficult. Shastra's words has two. One is the literal meaning, another is the intended meaning. The intended meaning here is all this goes to the respective devas. For seeing, I am seeing. Thank God I am seeing. The offering goes to Surya for that. I am not the eyes offers the sight to all that. When we go into the 12 yajnas, Ravi, we will see this. How each and every devata it is taking it to becomes a prayer. All that we are going to explain when we start from verse number 25, we are going to start that explanation. But for today, understand that Agni conveys the offering to the respective devas. By offering to the respective devas, your actions gets dissolved. By offering it to the devas, your actions get dissolved. That is why Yajna Karmala, of the 5 elements, we have kept Agni as the messenger, Agni as the carrier. Everything is put in Agni, and Agni is respectively taking and giving. Always remember, in Shastras, whenever we study a Shastra, Vedanta, there are two things, meanings. One is the direct meaning, another is the implied meaning. Manana, Vicharam is required, Mananam and Vicharam is needed to understand the implied meaning. So much of explanation has to be given to communicate what is the implied meaning. Direct meaning, dictionary at the Bhattalepo. Is it okay, Ravi? Yeah, Ravi has said that's a good one, sir. Thank you. We'll continue next week, continuing with Yajna.